Dr. Goenka. I would request all the other panelists and the participants to be on to put your video and audio on mute. And maybe the question answer after Dr. Goenka's address. If you want to raise, you can post it either in the Q&A box or you can raise your hand. I think I would now request Mr. Srivatsram, President, Madras Chamber, and MD Wheels India, to give the welcome address, please. Thank you, Mr.
Dr. Pawan Goenka, past presidents of MCCI, members of the Chamber, invitees, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening and a warm welcome to all of you. It's good to see so many of you present here virtually, taking time off on this wet evening in Chennai in response to our invitation for the Founders' Day of the Chamber. It is on this day that the Madras Chamber of Commerce and Industry was born on 29 September 1836. I think just a few days after Mumbai started their chamber, thanks to the wisdom of 18 businessmen. This day has been celebrated ever since annually as the Chamber Day. The Chamber's long journey over the years has seen many milestones, challenges, illustrious moments, and luminous leaders, all of which was beautifully captured in the coffee table book Championing Enterprise, authored by Mr. V. Sriram on the occasion of the 175th year of our chamber. The history of the Madras Chamber has mirrored the history of industrial development in Tamil Nadu. From 18 founding members, the chamber has since grown slowly and steadily to around 650 direct members, consisting of a mix of large, medium, and small enterprises, representing prominent businesses in Tamil Nadu, and a number of associated members representing education institutions, other chambers, etc. We have been very conscious in our chamber to maintain our core values and ethos intact, while at the same time keeping ourselves agile and in tune with the changing times. It has been this approach, along with the support of our member industries, the commitment and dedication of our presidents over time, that has contributed to the success and sustainability of the chamber. While primarily we focus on interactions between policymakers and industry members, we have changed with the times with a few special initiatives, such as setting up a vocational training and skill development center, starting a sustainable Chennai forum, a women's director forum, amongst other initiatives. The Chamber works its programs, conferences, and engagements with its members through expert committees across areas like taxation, logistics, company law, manufacturing, CSR, energy, amongst others. In addition to representing our members with policymakers, we also help members navigate the changing framework of rules and regulations in our country. As I come from manufacturing and given today's theme, I would like to cover some of the activities that the Chamber has taken up in the manufacturing sector. The Chamber took up a study on the regulatory roadmap for manufacturing in Tamil Nadu, which looked at critical regulatory framework concerning labor, environment, and taxation. Some of these recommendations have now appeared in the Business Facilitation Act for the state. This followed a study a year back on enhancing investment attractiveness of Tamil Nadu industrial estates that was taken up to assess the health of our existing industrial estates, identify potential areas for improvement from an infrastructural and operational standpoint. We have shared these findings with the Industries Department. This year has seen unprecedented disruption to our economy and amongst our members' businesses, thanks to the global pandemic COVID-19. Following the lockdown, a short while after the economy started opening up, we conducted a quick survey of over 1,200 MSMEs within the state to understand the key challenges faced by them, understand their awareness of various government policy measures and schemes, policy changes that they would prefer given their difficulties. In the survey, we not only looked at our member companies, but also their supply chain within the state. And this entire survey and the report was put together within 1 week. We also had an opportunity to present the findings and recommendations to the government. We have conducted a number of programs about changes in procedure for operations to our member companies during this pandemic. And we've shared it not only with member companies, but also their supply chain. We also provided feedback to members and guided them during this period of opening up post-lockdown with frequent interactions and guidance from the industries department of the government. We are also working closely with the Tamil Nadu government on drafting an appropriate industrial policy for the state, benchmarking some recent policies of other states, and factoring local conditions and aspirations of our member industries. The Chamber had curated and organized a conference on Chennai as a next generation financial hub during the Tamil Nadu Global Investor Meet 2019, and the government has evinced interest in taking this concept forward. We have had a number of meetings with the government presenting the business case and steps required to make Chennai a fintech hub. We have also worked and shared a draft fintech policy with the government and are in the process of finalizing it. The Indian government, now moving to the theme of this conference, the Indian government in 2014 launched Make in India with a plan to grow manufacturing from 16 to 25% of our GDP, and in the process create an additional 100 million jobs in the sector. Unfortunately, this has not quite gone as per plan. According to a recent Goldman Sachs report, while manufacturing has remained between 16 to 18% of our GDP, it has also slightly lagged our overall GDP growth. In recent times, however, global geopolitics is attempting to move some of global production away from China to other countries. There is at the same time the Prime Minister Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme that hopes to improve our self-reliance and should give a boost to manufacturing. There are opportunities that present themselves to us even in this dire pandemic-affected economy. India has often lagged other countries in manufacturing competitiveness. Are there specific actions that the government or corporates can do to make us more globally competitive and grow our exports? India has amongst the highest imports as a percentage of GDP amongst emerging economies. Are there actions we can do to improve our self-reliance and grow our economy using Atmanirbhar Bharat as a driver? And one factor that works in our favor is that for most products, India has a large enough market in terms of scale required for competitive manufacturing. The government has introduced a production linked incentive scheme, PLI, that's aimed at attracting inbound investments that encourage localization, and that should give a push for manufacturing. It's important to grow manufacturing in our country given that millions will be entering the workplace in the coming years. Although the nature of jobs goes through changes as technologies evolve, for every job created in manufacturing, there's a multiplier effect in terms of jobs created in the services supporting us. The urban population at 22% of the working population could get a boost if we are able to grow our manufacturing faster. India has established itself globally competitive in the area of IT services. Is there an opportunity to take advantage of our capability in this area and improve our competitiveness in manufacturing through Industry 4.0? There are significant technological changes taking place in a number of industries that, while they will open new opportunities, could also pose challenges given our current capabilities. The government recently reduced tax rates for corporates and has made tax rates for new enterprises competitive with other countries. While there is a gap in terms of our infrastructure, the government has planned significant investment in this area over the next 5 years. Some questions. Are there core competencies that can be built by companies in India that enable us to be globally competitive? Are there select areas that we can build our competitiveness and become a manufacturing hub in these specific areas for the world? Can we improve our self-reliance and boost manufacturing? Our chief guest today is better qualified than most to address some of these questions. Dr. Goenka, in addition to be an active senior executive in the Indian automotive industry, has always been a champion of Indian companies and a keen observer of the capability and limitations of our companies. He has a clarity of thought that make his keen observations of our industry both insightful and brilliant. I am sure that our chief guest, Dr. Goenka, in his address on competitiveness of manufacturing sector during the new normal, will elaborate on the opportunities and challenges that lie ahead of our country and give us a guidance in terms of the systematic and strategic approach that is required to put India on the path to our growth potential. Once again, I heartily welcome Dr. Goenka and every one of you who is virtually present here. We seek your good wishes and support for our Chamber's continued success, and we dedicate the Chamber to the industrial and economic progress of our state and country. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think you have already laid the ground for the Q&A session. Thanks a lot. It's nearly impossible to capture the 184 years history of the chamber in few minutes. I will still, for the benefit of our invitees and non-members, I would still try to boil the ocean now. We will have a brief presentation about some of the highlights of the chamber's activities. Team member, can you play the... Thank you for your patience and pardon us for the audio. It was not so clear. Sorry about it. And we are stepping into the 185th year with all your support. I now request Mr. Shivats Ram, President, to introduce our special guest on the special occasion and then invite him to give his special address. Over to you, Mr. President.
It gives me a great privilege to introduce our chief guest, who is such an icon of industry that he does not require an introduction to this audience. However, please allow me to briefly introduce Dr. Goenka. Dr. Paul Goenka earned his BTech in Mechanical Engineering from IIT Kanpur and PhD from Cornell University in the US. He is also a graduate of the Advanced Management Program from the Harvard Business School. He had an accomplished career at the General Motors R&D Center in Detroit from 1979 to 1993 and received many achievement awards during his time there. Thereafter, he joined Mahindra & Mahindra as the General Manager R&D. During his R&D tenure, he led the development of the Scorpio SUV. He was appointed CEO of Automotive Sector in April 2003, President Automotive Sector in September 2005, President Automotive and Farm Equipment Sectors in April 2010, Executive Director and Group President AFS in April 2015, Managing Director Mahindra & Mahindra in November 2016, and since April he has been designated as Managing Director and CEO. Dr. Goenka is also a member of the Group Executive Board and serves on the board of several Mahindra Group companies. Dr. Goenka received the Outstanding International Advisor Award from SAE in 1997 and the Distinguished Alumni Award from IIT Kanpur in 2004. He is fellow of the SAE International and of the Indian National Academy of Engineers. In 2011, Dr. Pawan Goenka was honored with the Automotive Man of the Year Award at the NDTV Car and Bike Awards. In December 2011, Dr. Goenka featured as Autocar Professionals Man of the Year. Dr. Goenka was conferred with the Doctor of Science by IIT Kanpur in 2015. He has been awarded the 2016 Pisita Medal of Honor, which is bestowed for his particularly distinguished achievement and leadership in the global automotive industry, and is the first Indian to receive this prestigious recognition. He was elected as the international member of the United States National Academy of Engineering, NAE, in February 2020. Dr. Goenka is a past president of SIAM, the Society of Automotive Engineers India, the ARAI Governing Council, and has served as a board member of the National Skill Development Corporation. He is currently a National Council member of CII and serves as the chairman of the board of directors of IIT Madras. He is also currently serving as the chairman of the steering committee on advancing local value add and exports scale under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India. Ladies and gentlemen, I present Dr. Pawan Goenka.
Thank you, Shivats, for giving me this opportunity to speak on the occasion of the 184th Chamber Day of Madras Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Can you all hear me well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's obviously my pleasure to be talking to the invitees and members of the second oldest chamber of the commerce in India. And as I was looking at the video, I could see the glorious past of this chamber and the kind of work that has been done in a rather unassuming manner. And maybe a lot of people outside Tamil Nadu don't know about the contributions that Madras Chamber has made to Indian industry and commerce. Tamil Nadu, as we all know, is the second largest state in terms of GSPD and the third largest in terms of manufacturing value add. The future holds great opportunity of the state, and clearly Mahindra believes in this state quite a bit, and that's the reason we have our R&D center for Mahindra and Mahindra, both automotive and tractor, located in Tamil Nadu. As I talk to you today, I will borrow heavily from my ACMA speech. So my apologies to those of you who were present for ACMA, because a lot of what I say may be repeat for you. So put in context of the new normal, and that's what everyone is talking about these days. Maybe COVID perhaps is the nudge that we needed to wake up what I would say a sleeping giant in manufacturing. The pain caused by COVID on the health front and to the economy at large is something that is unprecedented. Hopefully, the last time we as humanity will have to endure such a situation, but it is what it is, and we have to move forward. The COVID situation has pushed the industry in a corner, and the crisis has surely pushed us to explore new possibilities and seek a new normal. Some obvious things that we all have experienced already: a new normal for conducting meetings like this one, travel, business transactions, costs, inventories, adopting digitization, less need for supervision, lower requirements for area offices, branch offices, fresh insight into the capabilities of our people, and new ways of operating business and manage relationship is something that we are all experiencing in a physical world. Many things that we thought were impossible before 25th of March 2020 are possible today. Just imagine a meeting in Chennai in the morning, followed by one in Delhi at noon, and then with Paris in afternoon and USA late evening. All very effective, focused, and punctual. Imagine the productivity enhancement and cost saving from just this one change. And of course, the boundaries of when a day begins and when it ends have all disappeared. Some of the opportunities we see today for fixed cost reduction were just not on the table pre-COVID. The way we work, the way we live will change forever. And I believe on balance will change for the better once the scare of catching the infection is behind us. So let me change gear and turn my attention specifically to the manufacturing sector in India and the opportunities ahead, which is the topic of today's speech. Partly due to the COVID pandemic and partly due to shifting geopolitical scenario, manufacturing value chains are realigning, creating opportunities for Make in India and for participation in global value chains. Clearly, the global supply chain disruption that is underway is a godsend opportunity for Indian manufacturing. And then we, of course, have the clarion call by our Honorable Prime Minister to be Atmanirbhar. So what does Atmanirbhar really mean? It perhaps means different thing to different people. But to me, Atmanirbhar is not about making everything in India or to become totally insular. That will lead to an economic disaster in the long run. Atmanirbhar to me is first to take pride in what we do and what our country does. It is about not being dependent on any other country for our needs. It is about removing all our business disabilities. It is about being world-class in our product and service offerings. It is about innovating, developing technology, and creating pull for our offerings. It is about our markets adding value to our economy. So if we look back at the manufacturing sector in India, there have been some good success stories. And clearly, the automotive industry is recognized as having really done very well in terms of growing manufacturing in India. And perhaps pharma is another good example of growing manufacturing in India. There are many of you here who are members of ACMA and SIAM. From the time Indian economy opened up in 1991, the auto industry has grown at a CAGR rate of 8.2%. And that's very hard for 30 years in a row. The industry accounts for about 49% of manufacturing GDP, and today, 27% of the industry output by value of vehicles and components combined is exported. The industry has a highly integrated ancillary base, and that's the strength of this industry, invests substantially in R&D, and generates employment for an estimated 37 million people, direct and indirect combined. And incidentally, of course, you all know that Tamil Nadu has played a very important role in the growth of Indian auto industry. It is home to some of the leading OEMs and auto component manufacturers in India, contributing to about 35% of India's auto component production and about 35 to 40% of auto exports. The question is, what has led to the success of manufacturing growth to auto industry and what other industries can learn from it? First, no doubt, there is exponential growth in domestic demand in the last 3 decades, which certainly helps. But in my view, the biggest enabler of success was partnership between OEMs and suppliers, partnership between government and industry. There are several national champions, both at OEM level and at supplier level, that has led the manufacturing growth in the auto industry. And while today we may complain about the high GST rate on automotive products, but I must admit that over the years, Government of India has worked very closely with the industry to enable the growth of the industry. Today, I believe there are several manufacturing sectors that are poised for such growth, and a true partnership will enable that growth. And I believe that the COVID-19 aftermath will enable such partnerships in years ahead. Now, some of you may know, and Sevat had mentioned, that I have been asked by the government to chair a committee, appropriately an acronym SCALE, to look at manufacturing growth in some champion sectors. I've been working on this assignment now for about 6 months, and this was my first true exposure to many manufacturing sectors outside auto and tractors. And let me highlight for you some of my key takeaways from the various interactions that I have had with the manufacturing sector verticals. What I have learned is that India has tremendous managerial talent, and entrepreneurial aspiration in all manufacturing sectors. I'm truly impressed with the people that I have interacted with. Both the Government of India and the industry have very high aspirations. We have, as I said earlier, got an opportunity brought in by COVID with a resulting sense of urgency and the geopolitical realignment that is happening. This is an opportunity that we may never see again in our lifetimes. However, we will not get there by doing what brought us here. Both the industry and the government must change their thinking. No amount of incrementalism will redefine the game. Indian manufacturing has some major disabilities. All of you are reasonably aware of this. That must be removed if you're going to become globally significant in manufacturing. What are those disabilities? India, in many cases, does not have global scale. Investment decisions by many of us who are here today are, I believe, very conservative. India has tremendous cost disadvantage because of power cost, logistic cost, cost of money, and of regulatory compliances. FTAs that have been signed by Government of India generally do not favor manufactured goods export from India. India is lagging in capabilities in high-tech manufacturing. India's share of global high-tech trade is under 1%, while Germany's share is 8%, Korea is 8%, China is 26%. India's high-tech export is only 20 billion, and even Vietnam exports 4 times as much high-tech components as India does. India does not have a strong manufacturing brand, and this is very important, not just outside India, but even in India. Most affluent Indians prefer to use foreign brands. And there are very few sectors where India owns technology or IPR, not enough investment in R&D. Of course, there are some exceptions, and some of you might say that, look, I have invested a lot in R&D. Yes, that's true, but I think those are exceptions rather than rules. But what are the assets that we have? I believe that our biggest asset is a huge domestic market, which is still tremendous potential that is there in the domestic market to unearth. In addition, we have reasonably abundant supply of raw material. We have very strong private sector. We have demographic advantage. We have frugal mindset. We have culture of shop floor and business process innovation. We have very high aspirations, and at the present the right environment, opportunities are abundant. What we need are 3 things: put India first, partnerships, and longer time horizon. Put India first, partnerships, and longer time horizons. So let me give few examples of the work that I have done on this committee for the last 6 months of what are the opportunities, what we can do. And I'm just going to take few of the sectors we are working on, 24 sectors. I'll just take few of them as an example. Room air conditioner, a simple device, all of us know about it. The industry size in India is about 16,000 crores. The potential that the industry has defined for itself is 1 lakh crore in about 7-8 years. Today, the local value addition, even in what is manufactured or assembled in India, is only about 25%. 75% components are imported. We must target 75% of local component. Today, the import of finished air conditioners is about 30%. We must target less than 10%. Today, export is virtually nil. We should target about 35,000 crore of export. There is no reason why we cannot do it. All of it, I believe, and the industry believes, is easily doable with partnership between OEM and suppliers and between OEMs and Government of India, just like what I talked about for the auto industry. I'll take even a simpler example of the set-top box. Many of us have several set-top boxes in our house, in our homes. A small industry, $300 million. We used to be 90% local. Now we are 90% import. We let it slip away. Only 4 user companies have to agree to buy from local manufacturers and will bring back $300 million of manufacturing value addition to India. Again, partnership between customer and manufacturer is all that is needed. Furniture. India is a large market for furniture, but we virtually have no export in a segment where global trade is $125 billion. Global players like IKEA and Williams Sonoma are looking at India both for market and for sourcing. How do we create our competitiveness for export? By setting up large furniture hubs, we need scale. By creating furniture grade timber, we need raw material. By following global regulations for timber, we need quality. By reducing logistic cost and by developing skilled resources. All of this is doable, but will require a holistic approach, and the payback can be very, very large for us. Electronic components, we are losing out on scale completely. Even for automotive industry, electronic components is the biggest import that happens today. And if you do not take action now, electronic components and products may overtake oil in import bill. Government of India has recently come out with a PLI policy to encourage local manufacturing of electronic components. Medical devices. India's market size is $11 billion, but there's almost no Indian company of scale making medical devices in India. I think the largest manufacturer perhaps is General Electric. We import 80% of our requirement of medical devices. This sector needs extensive technology know-how and precision manufacturing. But it is possible for us to move from 80% import to say 40% import and also become export based for few specific devices. I can go on and on. And opportunities in food processing, fisheries, agrochemicals, textiles, footwear, toys, sporting goods, medical equipment, drones, TVs, robotics, electric vehicle components, abundant opportunities, but there is no silver bullet. There is no one size fits all. We will need to build a holistic long-term strategy for each sector. Needs for each sectors are different with some common underlying themes. So let me spend some time now to look at imports, exports, technology capabilities, brand, and globalization in this context. Many examples that I quote are from auto industry because that's the industry I know a little bit about. But please remember that this is amongst the most integrated industry in India, and the examples are equally applicable to many other industries. What auto has done can be done in many other places. And I'm going to do this by raising 5 somewhat difficult questions. The first question that I raise is, can we and should we delink from imports completely? Many people talk about that. I think no, not for both the questions. Neither we can nor we should. We will have to continue to import. There are things that other countries can do better, and that is fine. We don't have to do everything ourselves. Interdependence through trade is important for the global and domestic economy. We should avoid any knee-jerk reaction of asking for a ban of imports or any such actions, as it can have potential repercussions on the industry and retaliation by other countries. But what we need to look at carefully is what are we importing and why are we importing? There are 3 reasons for import: cost benefit, capacity constraints in India, and technology and capability gap that we might have. Taking example of auto component industry. Auto component industry imports about 1.1 lakh crores worth of material every year. My guess is about half of the import, that is 50,000 crore plus, happens because of lower cost. Now this needs immediate focus. Very difficult to believe that India is not capable of producing automotive glass, bearings, castings, wheel rims at competitive cost. We must understand why. And OEMs, suppliers, and Government of India need to work together to remove the disabilities and get this value add into Indian factories. Partnership, again, required. It is heartening, as Srivastava will tell you, that the component industry has taken a target to reduce import by 50% over the next 3 to 5 years. My guess is about 25,000 crore of components are imported in the industry because of technology. Some other country has better technology capability. And I personally don't mind this. We cannot have technical expertise in everything. But what worries me is that there is very little technological innovation happening in India. What is the true R&D spend that Indian manufacturing industry is doing, leaving out few specific sectors, is a question that we need to ponder over. The second question that I ask is, do we have right to get a sizable share of global value chain? Everybody talks about how India needs to participate in GVC. It's a big opportunity, undoubtedly. An example is from auto component. Global export is about $1.1 trillion of auto components, with Germany doing about 15%, China doing about 11%, South Korea doing about 6%, and India does only 1.3%. The question is why? Why? We should ask ourselves. Textile is another example, with exports of $37 billion. That sounds large, but it's only 4% share of global trade of textile industry. Bangladesh, in fact, does almost as much as India in terms of textile export or garment export. There's huge opportunity for India to double its share in the next 5 years and take the share of China. Similarly, similar story for leather footwear. India is the second largest leather footwear producer after China, but it's ranked at a low 9th on the list of export countries. India export leather footwear of just about $2 billion compared to China at about $10 billion and Vietnam at about $5 billion. Studies have shown that India can target easily $10 billion of leather footwear export by 2030 and generate an additional employment opportunity of maybe 11 lakh people. The auto component industry has recently set a target of tripling its export from the current about $15 billion to $45 billion in the next 5 years. Furniture has set a target of going from $1 billion to $10 billion by 2030. While textile sector has taken a target of going to $75 billion in 5 to 7 years. These targets are fine, but the question is, how will it happen? How do we create the right to win? Now, until now, the manufacturing sector or export from India have hinged around cost competitiveness. With time, many emerging economies have caught up on manufacturing capabilities and offer equally competitive or maybe even lower cost basis. While cost will continue to be important, to really achieve a greater global market share, we need to do more. We need to invest in technology, technology-led innovation and in capacity. And I do not believe that simply by having a cost arbitrage or lower labor cost, India can become a global manufacturing hub in any manufacturing sector. We have to ask ourselves, what is the narrative for export from India? Germany is all about technology. Japan is all about quality. Korea is all about value for money. China is all about scale and cost. What is our narrative? It has to be clearly spelled out. What will it take to make the buyers from large developed economies to make a beeline to India? And that brings me to the third question. Can we become the global hub for technology and manufacturing in select industries? And I again reiterate that Indian industry has to invest more in technology or capacity building. India invests only about 1% of GDP in R&D, while Korea invests 4%. Furthermore, in Korea, 2/3 of R&D investment is done by industry. In India, it is only about 1/3. For capacity expansion, again, leaving out the current situation, we tend to wait for volume visibility. And we get into a chicken and egg situation. China is where it is, I believe, because capacity was built before the demand. And there are many global manufacturers who want to relocate to India today because of the changing geopolitical situation. But they're looking for plug and play infrastructure, and we don't have it. And no one is willing to invest in it. Is it government's role? Is it private sector's role? I don't know. But we need to have the plug and play infrastructure for manufacture from outside to come into India. And China did that. Vietnam did that. One of the sunrise sectors where India can still take the lead, I believe, though China is much ahead, is electric vehicles, specifically for shared mobility. Can we imagine a future where India is the most sought after destination for sourcing electric vehicle technologies and components in the shared mobility space? I think now is the time to invest in technologies like electric vehicle and become a leading source for EV components and software. And as large part of developing world leapfrogs to such emerging mobility technologies, we should be ready to become their preferred technology partner and sourcing base. I guess if you were to look at talk, India has done enough talk on electric vehicles for the last 3 years. We are talking endlessly about it, but what do we have to show for all the talk? Last year, the country sold only 2,800 electric vehicle four-wheelers, only 5,000 or so three-wheelers, and only 24,000 two-wheelers. That is total volume of 30,000 electric vehicles in an industry of 21 million. And unfortunately, I would say that again, everybody is in a wait and watch mode. Like electric vehicles, drone is another example. Drones have wide variety of applications: agriculture, highway, defense, medical response, disaster response, and so on. What stops us to become a global hub for drone manufacturing and associated technology? India has already opened out about 70% of its land mass under the new drone policy. The policy encourages collaboration between public and private sector players. And we should take advantage of this and use the large scale opportunities of the domestic market to achieve cost competitiveness and technological leadership. Again, an industry government partnership is what is needed to make this happen. Another aspect, if there are some multinationals in the audience today, is context in this context is the manufacturing strategy of large multinationals like Bosch, Magna, Continental, ABB, IKEA, Nike. These multinationals have set up large-scale mother plants in various parts of the world and use these plants to supply globally. But no one seems to do any major export out of their plants in India. What is needed, we have to ask, to make India an attractive location for such mother plants for multinationals? So the fourth question that comes to my mind then is, when and how do we become truly global? So let's begin again taking auto as an example. We are the fifth largest auto producer in the world, ahead of Mexico, South Korea, Brazil, Spain, and France. While we should be happy about what the industry has achieved, let's also take cognizance of the fact that our high ranking in production terms is because of the large number of entry-level small size cars and commercial vehicles, all requiring a relatively lower value add as compared to vehicles in developed economies. And if you look at the revenue-wise, we are probably 9th or 10th position in the global pecking order in the auto industry. Auto industry export from India, though large in comparison to what exports happen from India at about 16% of all the vehicles. Korea is 55%, Thailand is 53%, Germany is 27%, Japan is 45%. What do we need to do to become truly an export base for even an industry as mature as auto industry? Coming to suppliers in auto industry, of the top 50 global suppliers, majority are from Germany, Japan, France, US, and China. India, I think, has only one supplier in the global top 50. The question again I have is, will India have its own Continental or Magna or ABB someday? Scale is important to become truly global. And to get to the global success, we have to have a two-pronged strategy, continue to focus on technology-led innovation and exploring inorganic growth. Any crisis throws open interesting M&A opportunities. The current crisis and pain in the economy is no different. So this brings me to my last question, and a provocative question. Do we have the mindset to be Atmanirbhar? Do we have the mindset to be Atmanirbhar? The road to Atmanirbhar is surely not easy. We have to ask, what pain are we willing to endure as an industry, as an individual company in the short term to make India Atmanirbhar in the midterm? It is often easier to import versus to doing local value add. It is often easier to buy or license technology versus developing technology. It is often easier to follow than to lead. So as I said earlier, we have the ingredients: size of domestic market, abundant natural resources, large pool of working age population, strong private sector, strategic geolocation. What we need is the mindset. I strongly believe that the road to Atmanirbhar lies in our resolve and our approach. First, we have to believe in ourselves, in our businesses, and in the Prime Minister's dream. The manufacturing sector clearly has the vision and the ambition to grow to USD 1 trillion size by 2025. We now need to put a combined might behind this and invest in our ambition. There is, I have no doubt, support from the government on measures that improve ease of doing business and on lowering cost of doing business. But I would say the responsibility for growth of manufacturing in India is not with the government, is with all of us. We as a manufacturing industry need to commit to action. How can industry commit to greater value addition in India? Can the industry commit to doubling its R&D spend? Can the industry commit to global standards in technology and quality in all that we make? Can the industry commit to overcoming the structural disabilities that we have by a frugal mindset? The need is for the industry and the government to work hand in hand to take the India's manufacturing sector to the next level. So friends, I've said a lot of things. I hope some of it raised some sort of questions in your mind. Let us define the new normal, which will chart the new growth path for the Indian manufacturing. And once again, I am very happy and delighted to be talking to you, people who believe in manufacturing, have grown manufacturing businesses, and I'm sure are committed to growing manufacturing in India, whatever it takes. I stop here, Srivats, with urging everyone to stay safe in these very difficult times, and nobody should become very aggressive or heroic in taking chances, saying that coronavirus will not strike me. I can tell you that in my house right now, I have 2 corona patients, and therefore it can go anywhere. Just be careful. Thank you.
Mr. Srivats?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Goenka, for your insightful and very interesting talk. I think it's the first time I've heard you talk about so many other sectors other than automotive. Of course, our context has been the automotive industry in the past. There are a few questions from the audience. I thought I will bring those up for you. The first point is that after the geopolitics has changed and people started moving exports out of China, a lot of the other countries like Vietnam or even Bangladesh have been able to actually get a pie of that. India has not been able to do that. So is that going to change, and what needs to happen for that to change?
I wish I had an answer to this question. I mean, that's a question that is in many people's mind on what does India need to do to attract this investment. Now, I alluded to it in my talk by saying that many of these companies are looking for plug and play infrastructure to come in, because they don't want to come in, wait for 2 years to start production. And India does not have enough, I would say India does not have any plug and play infrastructure available for any large scale manufacturing to come in and start doing things. If you look at Vietnam, how Vietnam has grown in manufacturing in the last 10 years, learning from China. I hate to say it, but we have to learn from Vietnam. And we have to see how they have been able to attract this investment into Vietnam. Sometimes we become too philosophical. We need to be very realistic on what needs to be done. Okay. Global value chain, I think, is also misunderstood sometimes. Global value chain meaning you are part of a puzzle. You are not necessarily the end. You may be in the middle, right? Now, if you have to be part of global value chain, that means something is being made in country A, something is being made in India, and then something is made in country C, and final product in country D. If you have to do that, then the whole system has to integrate so seamlessly. There cannot be any logistic delays, and there cannot be any sort of power cuts. There cannot be any blockades that happen on the road. I don't think we have been able to give confidence to large multinationals that India will not have this sort of seamless delivery in the global value chain. That's a problem statement. But what is the solution? I really don't have the answer. And I don't think solution can come overnight either. We have to demonstrate by doing few things. I talked about furniture earlier. In furniture, we are trying to set up a large hub for furniture manufacturing on 500 acres. In fact, Tamil Nadu is one of the states that we are looking at, where we invest 3,000-4,000 crores to create a complete one-stop shop for making furniture, having timber available nearby, port nearby, a design center, skill center, even dormitories for migrant workers, all of that. Now that's a fairly big infra project, one could say. Right? Now the question that will come up very soon is who will invest? Right? Will the government of India come forward and say, okay, this is my job to create the plug and play infrastructure. I'm not doing it as a charity. I'm going to get paid when people start using it, but I'm going to put up the upfront money. Will the government of India take that route? Or will a private investor come in and say, okay, I can see the value in it. I'm going to put in 4,000 crores and let it happen. Now, if you go by examples in China and Vietnam, it was the government that put in that infra, right? Not the private sector. In India, I would say private sector is much stronger than it is in Vietnam and China. And therefore, maybe private sector can do it. But unless we do that, my view is that we will not be able to attract a lot of manufacturing that is dislocating from India, from China to go somewhere else. And the other problem that we still see that we doing business in India are quite used to the ease of doing business or lack thereof. And we know how to manage it, right? Or we know how to function in spite of it. Many of the multinationals get bewildered by things that we take as routine. How do we really get down to ease of doing business that is going to attract manufacturing into India? So that I think we still have a long ways to go. A lot of improvement happened in the last 2-3 years, undoubtedly, but we still have a long ways to go before we can become as good as many other countries that are attracting investment. So there's no easy answer for it. A lot has to be done, and nothing can happen overnight.
Doctor, there's another question. Is EV going to be affordable in the future in India? We're still importing components. And what is the government's role in terms of making the infrastructure ready for EV and in terms of getting us onto the EV roadmap?
Okay, so electric vehicle, will it be affordable in India? It depends on what you mean by affordable, and it means which sector you're talking about. I have been saying for quite some time that in India, the right segment for electric vehicles will be in shared mobility. That means use of electric vehicle for fleet operations of corporate fleet or otherwise, for three-wheelers, because more you run per day, more value you get from it, clearly, because the variable cost is lower, fixed cost is higher. And in that application, in many cases, like in three-wheelers, even in some four-wheelers, we already have reached the break-even point in terms of user cost per kilometer. If it is being run enough number of kilometers in a day, but not for personal use. So personal use will still continue to remain niche in the sense that people will buy electric vehicle because they like the vehicle, because they don't mind spending extra money, but they're not looking necessarily for a financial return for it. Whereas commercial application will happen with financial return, and I think we are just there. So I would expect to see a significant growth of shared mobility electric vehicles in India in the next 3 to 5 years. Unfortunately, COVID-19 was a setback for electric vehicle growth. Things were going quite well in the shared mobility space. It's taken a back seat right now. But it's coming back slowly, and I would think that in 3 to 5 years you will see the segment that will probably convert to electric vehicles in a large number. The first is going to be three-wheeler segment, followed by two-wheeler and a small sort of taxi kind of applications for corporate fleets.
Dr. Goenka, I think your video is off.
Oh, sorry.
Just turn it on. The next question is that we have not really built, no Indian company has built a brand in international markets, leave alone the brand of Indian manufacturing. So is there a role for, I know other than companies building their brand, is there a role for the government or trade associations in improving the image of India as a manufacturing center?
Undoubtedly, Srivats, undoubtedly. In fact, this afternoon, I was in a CII meeting, National Council. I don't know, some of you may have been there, where there's a presentation made on building Indian brand. And in all the deliberations that we are having, the different sectors that I talked about, building brand of manufacturing brand of India is very important. And I have said in the past that a company brand can very rarely go above a country brand, right? So when you think Toyota, you think Japan, you think quality, right? When you think Mercedes, you think Germany, you think technology. When you talk about an Indian company, I don't want to name any company. Let's say when you think Mahindra, okay, I'll name Mahindra. When you think Mahindra, you think India. Then what do you think? If you're outside India, right? So that's what I keep saying, that we need to build the country brand, and the company brand will follow. Company brand can below a country brand, but it's very difficult to go above a country brand because you are part of that ecosystem. That sort of the image of the country goes with you. So when we travel outside India as Indians, and unfortunately or fortunately, we are very distinguishable that we are from India. Fortunately, I would say, why unfortunately? But the moment you travel and somebody meets you, there is an image of an Indian, right? And therefore, you are automatically have a brand because you are from India. Most people think that you have a smart brain because you are from India, right? So that's a positive side of our brand. But we need to build that manufacturing brand. And I would, in fact, say the following. And it's not a very nice thing to say, but India's manufacturing brand, even in India, is not very strong, right? How many of us would rather buy a product made outside India because we think that will be better quality than product made in India? Many will pay a premium for buying product from outside India if you had the money. So we first have to build our brand even in our own country, that Indian manufacturing sector can produce high quality, high technology products for consumption by Indian customers. Let's even start there first. Then let's talk about doing it outside India. And in fact, today when we were discussing in CII, this question came up, and many of the sectors I said that want to see how India can help to build the brand. And it will have to be, again, a joint effort between Indian government and the private industry, because there will be country level brand, there will be industry level brand, and there will be company level brand. So there is a brand fund that is available with Department of Commerce under IBEF, and that fund has been made available to the industry to say, if you want to use this fund, go ahead, as long as industry also comes in and contributes to it to try and build the brand. But building the brand requires, again, a very long-term approach. We need to bring in some kind of marketing brains together and do the same thing that we will do for you to build your brand as you run your company. We need to have the brand strategy. And again, it's a very long-term thing, something that we've been talking about for at least 8 to 10 years. But we just really haven't gotten started, and we need to do that. Without that, we will remain competing on cost, and competing on cost will never make us prosper.
The associated question, two questions actually. One is, how can the manufacturing sector attract young talent from the services sector? This is one question. And the other question is that with automation and digitization coming up, will not that affect the multiplier effect of manufacturing in terms of job creation?
So very good question. So on the first one, let me disagree with you, whoever asked the question. And there are many people in manufacturing sector today, and maybe they will either agree or disagree with me. But I think the manufacturing sector today is not at a disadvantage compared to service sectors, leaving out financial sector. The financial sector and consulting gives fairly significantly high compensation, and therefore they do attract the cream of the cream. But I don't think that manufacturing sector is at a disadvantage compared to any other service sector. IT, hospitality, all of these sectors, I think we can get the best of the people. And when we go to recruit in Mahindra, we are in most campuses, in engineering campuses, definitely in the top 10, if not top 5, in terms of the desirability of people wanting to work. And we pick up the very good people from campuses. I don't know if you have an experience or anybody else would like to add to it. So I don't think that we are at a disadvantage today. It has happened over the years. If you go back 15 years ago, we were at a disadvantage in manufacturing sector, but I don't believe that is the case today. Again, it will depend company to company because each company has its own reputation. But manufacturing as a sector is not negative anymore, in my view. Okay. Now coming to the robotics and digitalization and how it will lose the multiplier effect of manufacturing. See, when we say multiplier effect implies the backward and forward linkages, right? The forward linkages, that means the product being sold, serviced, and so on. That will not go away. Backward linkages will not go away. What will happen is that on the shop floor, number of people working will be less. Whether it is an auto OEM or any other OEM, whether you're an ancillary supplier or OEM, doesn't matter. But the number of people working on the shop floor will reduce with automation, with digital coming in a big way. And that's unavoidable. If we say that in India we need jobs and therefore we will not do automation, we will become non-competitive. So we have to do what is right to remain competitive. Okay? Now, forget about automation. In fact, the learning from COVID itself has taught many of us that we can work with fewer people without bringing automation, right? And you're smiling, so obviously you have had the same thought in your mind. So if there was one worry that I have, if I was running the government of India, my biggest worry today will be what will happen to jobs. Okay, because in India, the productivity of, in fact, white collar is perhaps even poorer than productivity of blue collar, because blue collar we have always kept doing the innovation, the improvement. Every agreement we get more productivity in from blue collar, but nobody asked white collar productivity. So I think jobs are at risk, and unless we are able to create different skills for different kind of jobs, so for example, I would say that can India become the global back office for all robotics and automation. Now, if we can become the global seat today in a connected world, you don't have to be there to be the back office. You can be here. If India can grow the talent to become the global back office for everything that is coming in that will replace jobs on the factory floor, we can generate many more jobs. Now, that will require a totally different set of skills than we have today. And that's where the skilling has to go.
Thank you, Dr. Goenka. There are many more questions that are there. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. Thank you once again for your brilliant insights into the industry and the way forward. And thank you for taking our questions. It's been delightful. Of course, the questions are just flowing in even as we speak. But thank you for your time, sir.
Yeah, if you have one or two more questions you want to ask, I'm quite okay.
Okay.
Shivats?
Yeah. So, okay, the China sourcing from China. The question is, many companies are sourcing from China, sourcing for cost reasons. Even if you're looking at bringing investments into India, won't the cost advantage be lost?
So this is a question that we need to ponder over. Okay. And when I said the three things that have to happen, I said during my speech, think India first, partnerships, and longer time horizon. Right? Now, in Korea, you try and convince the Korean OEMs to source from outside Korea, and it's a uphill battle. Okay, you know that we have a company in Korea, SsangYong Motor, and I, as chairman of that company, and I'm just saying it to this gathering just to make a point. I cannot convince them to source from China, from India, even if it's 10%, 15% lower cost. Right? They will find any reason, and that's the think Korea first. Now, unfortunately, in our mindset, and I'm as guilty of it as anybody else, we will say if I'm able to export from China at a landed cost lower than 5%, why should I pay an Indian supplier 5% more? We have to change that mindset, because whenever that happens, there will be a time that will take for Indian supplier base to catch up on cost. Right? Now, many times you wonder how China can supply at a certain cost, because it doesn't make sense. It's sometimes the cost is even lower than the material cost or the raw material cost, right? What happens there, we don't know. But the fact is that with 10%, 15% duty, with logistic cost that gets added, with inventory cost that get added, I cannot see why we cannot do, except for electronics, which is a separate thing. I cannot see why we cannot do it at a lower cost than China. Electronics is a question of huge scale. Okay, and we just have not invested in that scale. There we need to have a totally different mind thinking. But in automotive, and as I talked about in ACMA also, in automotive, the examples I gave of bearings, glass, wheel rims, there's no reason why Indian suppliers cannot be competitive on cost. And therefore we have to take that angle out. And what we need to do, Sevat says, and a lot of work was done during this steering committee work that we are doing. We have to go granular. We cannot make a sweeping statement. Pick a commodity, pick a component. Why is China cheaper than we are? Go line item by line item by line item by line item, and you find the reason. Sometimes the reason lies with the manufacturer, sometimes it lies with the government. The partnership has to come in and say our objective has to be that we have to be lower cost, except again examples like electronics. Then what we have to do with import. Now there are FTA problem with some ASEAN countries, leave that aside for a minute, but we just have to focus on that. And I think there will be a period of 2 to 3 years where where our cost will be somewhat higher because we don't have the scale. And that's where the government has to come in by either doing a PLI scheme, as they have done for some sector, or doing a phase manufacturing plan scheme, PMP scheme, as they're doing in some sector. And if we can do that to kind of bridge the gap for 2 to 3 years, then we can become lower cost than China after some time. But the problem, Sivat, is that no matter when you start, it's going to take 3 years to get there. It won't happen overnight. And therefore, OEMs, no matter which industry you are in, I took air conditioner as an example. All compressors are imported, mostly. Motors are imported. Circuit boards are imported. Aluminum is imported. Why? And there are only 6 buyers. In air conditioning, only 6 buyers, right? You take Voltas and Godrej and Blue Star and Panasonic and LG and all that, that's it. 6, 7 buyers have to say, I'm going to source from India. That's it. And if you say, I'm going to source from India, it's done. You take set-top box. There are only 4 buyers. Tata Sky, Jio, and whoever else. If they say, I'm going to source from India, done. What's the big deal? So why are we as OEMs, and again, I'm including myself, so it's not an attack on anybody else, I'm including myself. Why we as an OEM cannot say that, okay, I'm willing to pay a little bit premium for some time so that I can help in value addition in India. And in some sense, auto industry did that. While we may question something that didn't happen, but if you go back to 30 years ago to today, the reason we have such a strong ancillary base is because OEMs work with the suppliers to say, let's work together and see how we can make manufacturing in India viable both from technology as well as from cost. And that's why we are where we are. Sorry, I mean, these are the questions that this sort of gets me going all the time, because I have been contemplating as to what is it that India needs to do to really become much bigger in manufacturing. And I passionately believe that India is not leveraging the true potential that we have in manufacturing. And all of us are to blame, every one of us. We just are not doing things which are coming together in aggregate way. Most of us are thinking of our own sphere and doing the best in our own sphere. And if you have to take that expertise that we have, managerial expertise, entrepreneurial expertise that we have, to a much wider level, I think we can create magic.
That's very interesting. So do you have time for one more question?
Sure.
Okay.
I was told that I'm supposed to be here till 7:30, so I blocked till 7:30.
Okay. Yeah, I think we can go on till at least for another 5-10 minutes. So the question is that states in India play an equal role as far as taxation, policies, incentives. So especially when it comes to raw materials and power, how are we going to have kind of a unified front? One is it's fine the Ministry of Commerce being energized by this new initiative, but how is that going to be driven into the states and then affect costs?
See, again, it is a difficult question, and sometimes, unfortunately, politics also comes into it, right? Where it becomes which government is running which state, and we cannot run away from that. But I would say that the competition amongst the states today to bring in investment and bring in manufacturing jobs is much higher than what it was 20 years ago. 20 years ago, you knocked on their door. Today, they knock on your door. That's the difference, right? I remember about 6-7 years ago, chief minister from a state came to visit us in our office, unheard of. The chief minister will come to visit you in your office. And we sat down, and Mr. Mahindra asked him, sir, can I get you some tea or coffee? He said, Anand ji, मैं यहाँ चाय पीने नहीं आया हूँ, मैं यहाँ investment लेने के लिए आया हूँ. आप investment की बात कीजिए. So that's the kind of approach that we see now. Again, obviously not all states are like that. It very much depends on who's running the state, right? So if you leave politics aside for a minute, I think states are also changing rapidly. But sometimes I think what happens is that the view that central government has is a little bit more holistic than the view that the state government will have. COVID-19 is a very good example. I mean, often we are quoting right now in many of the meetings that while central government is trying to balance lives and livelihood, state government is saying, my role is life, you worry about livelihood, right? Now, may or may not be true, but that sort of sometimes becomes a narrow view. So when I talk about partnership with government, the partnership has to be with state government and central government at a different level. Now, I take Furniture Hub. I just talked about that. There are 3 states competing for it. The states are calling me, saying, I haven't heard from you in 3 days. What's happening? So I think while there are enough examples of states not being so agile or aggressive in looking at growing manufacturing, one can always cite many examples, but I can cite equally many examples of where states are really going out of their way to attract manufacturing.
Yeah, probably we'll just do one last question. This is from another industry, so I'll just throw it out. What is your take on the construction and infrastructure segments? These traditionally have had a good percentage of the GDP of the country. So how is technology catching up to this sector?
What?
How is technology catching up this sector, and how is that likely to play out going forward?
See, I would be speaking out of my area of knowledge if I talk too much about these sectors. But what is very clear to me is that India cannot grow if these sectors don't grow. Okay, infrastructure, road construction, real estate is in some sense a enabler for growth of many other sectors. Auto industry, for example, road construction infra creation is a bonanza for auto industry, right? So clearly the government also has very high focus on this and these sectors, but whether the focus is turning into action good enough for the sector to thrive, I don't know that, right? Now, this sector also has its own woes, has its own creation of problems when I look at it from outside, right? And the sector also has to see, do they need to clean up their own act in terms of really growing and the way it can grow. And again, if I said any more on this, I'll get in trouble because I don't know anything beyond this.
Okay, fair enough. I think we'll just do one more question. Coming to electronics, I know that it's a subject that we have skirted, but really, if you want India to be an electronic hub, we probably need some in-country fab facility, and that is not possible without the government being actively involved.
Right.
So, are there any thoughts on that? Because that could actually have a multiplier effect across different industry sectors.
Right. So I would say two things. One is fab, and one more I'll come to. So fab clearly is required because in many things, like for example, television, the open station or whatever it's called, the screen. Without fab, we cannot do it. And in TV, therefore, that represents about 50% of the BOM cost. Okay, I didn't realize that till I started working on this project. 50% of BOM cost is just the screen, right? And that is fully imported because we have no fab. And fab, as everybody knows, is a very high investment, right? And no individual company is likely to come forward and say, I'm going to invest this kind of money to set up a fab. And this is again an area where government of India has to play a role to make it happen. Now, in the work that we have done, Commerce Minister is saying that you come with a proposal on what is required. So what he's saying is the government of India will not set up a fab lab. Okay, that is the wrong thing to do because we cannot be running fab. Private industry has to do it, but I also know private industry cannot do it on their own. So one idea he gave was, can 4 or 5 players come together and invest together? And we said, no, that will never work. So I said, okay, can one player come and say, this is what I need as help from the government, and then we'll take a look at it, right? So that is being discussed right now, and I think it's coming up in many different conversations on fab. But there's one more thing that we need to do in electronics. See, while we are doing, let's say, circuit board assembly in India now, more and more, right? But components are still all imported. Now, components imported because no specific buyer or user, even not as an individual, but even as an industry, has enough volume to justify making components in India at a cost that is comparable cost. What we need to do is aggregate demands from different sectors. So as we work on air conditioners, as we work on television, CCTV, drones, auto, everybody needs same kind of components. But there's nobody aggregating the demand and saying, hey, India as a whole is using as many electronic components as any other country except China, right? So why can we not make it in India? Because the demand is so distributed that nobody is coming together and say, hey, this is my requirement. So just yesterday, we had discussed this, that we have assigned the task to somebody to aggregate the demand of components from various industry sectors and then say that do we reach a sizable volume, and then talk to an industry player, whether in India or outside India, to say now let's set up a manufacturing of these components in India. So the aggregation of demand, when the industry is large enough, like automotive industry, aggregation of demand happens within the industry, and then the ancillary can sort of thrive. But when the industry itself is not large enough, the aggregation of demand has to come from multiple industries together to create ancillary industry that serves multiple verticals. And then we get this, because see, in ancillary, scale is important. while I said earlier that we should be willing to pay a small premium, but a small premium cannot become 20% premium. A small premium cannot last for 10 years. A small premium for 2 to 3 years is what one can probably justify, but otherwise then you are becoming non-competitive. So who will do this? Again, the question comes up, whose role is it? Should it be the role of CII? Should it be the role of Government of India, Department of Electronics? Or should it be the role of some committee that gets formed by the government to look into it? So the point that I'm making, Srivastava, is that, and I'm almost having like a friendly dialogue here, so please don't hold this against me, any of you. I don't know many of you, and you're probably meeting or talking to me for the first time. But the point that I'm making is that we need to just take a step back and say, what is missing? In which way is India inferior to any country in the world when it comes to manufacturing? And I would say you cannot come up with one reason why India should not be at the top, provided three things: partnerships, India first, long-term vision. If you can just do and this will happen by Indian players, finally. Because you are the one who is going to put India first. Who else will put India first? You are the one who is going to take a long-term view for India. Who else will do it? You are the one who is going to look for partnerships within India, with the government, with the consumers, with OEMs, with suppliers. Who else will do it? So onus is back on us. If we don't do it, we are to blame. Nobody else. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Goenka. I think that's really quite a beam of optimism in this otherwise fairly gloomy economic situation that surrounds us. So thank you once again for talking and also being very patient with our questions. And I think we've all learned quite a lot from our interaction with you.
Thank you so much for that brilliant talk. The message is loud and clear, the three mantras. And also you have raised a pertinent question, how ready we are for the Atmanirbhar. Maybe I would request President for a longer session with him separately. I leave it to you and Dr. Goenka. We have certain pleasant duties to do. We would like to present a memento to Dr. Goenka, of course, unfortunately only virtually. Shall I request Mr. Srivatsram to do that, to present a memento as a token of our gratitude to Dr. Goenka?
On behalf of MCCI, we'd like to present a memento to you. It will physically come to you, but this is just the virtual presentation.
Thank you very much. I can see it.
Yes.
Things can happen virtually, but it's not possible to exchange things yet, right? Maybe after some time.
We could do that. We also would like to present a memento to our outstanding and outgoing president, Mr. Ramkumar Ramurthy, the immediate past president. I would again request Mr. Srivatsram to do this pleasant job. Can we have his
Ramkumar? Yeah, before I'd like to thank Ramkumar for his passion, his commitment, and the intensity that he brought to Madras Chamber during his tenure as president. While his achievements during this period have been many, I'd like to specially highlight his contribution towards fintech, education, and the healthcare initiatives that the chamber has taken. Ram, I have learned, as someone working along with you, I've learned a lot working along with you over the last 2 years. And while you're outgoing, we continue to reach out to you from time to time. Thank you so much, and congratulations on your excellent tenure of 2 years as president.
Thank you.
Can you say a few words, Ram, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure, Srivatsara. I think it is both an honor and a privilege to serve as a president of this illustrious chamber, which has been relevant for the last 184 years, and a chamber that has nurtured, shaped, and strengthened the trade and commerce and industry backbone of the country. I would like to share my thanks to the General Committee, a very vibrant General Committee. And I'm sure that many of you recall during the months of March, April, and May, we had a GC meeting almost every day. And I should really thank the General Committee for that. The Secretariat, the Chairman, as well as members of several subcommittees, as well as all the members who provided the much needed support. And listening to Dr. Goenka today, we couldn't have expected anything better to start the next year. As they say in corporate life, the exit rate of the fourth quarter is very important for us for the upcoming year. So I think he has set a fantastic platform for us to ponder. But more importantly, I know he did make a reference to the unending talking that we do, and I think it's time for us to walk the talk. Thank you, Dr. Goenka, for your insights. It is a pleasure listening to you.
Thank you, and congratulations for your great year of presidency.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ram Kumar. The chamber also has a very unique customary practice of honoring staff members who put in long years of service, 15 years, 20, 25, especially in this era. Today, we would like to recognize the services of Mr. S. Suresh, our data coordinator and manager here, who has completed 15 years of service with the chamber this year. This is to be presented to Mr. Suresh, Mr. Srivatsram.
Congratulations, Suresh, on completing 15 years of service to the chamber.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks, Mr. Suresh. Congratulations. Without further ado, I would now request Mr. T.R. Kesavan, the incoming Vice President, to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Saraswati. Very difficult to offer a vote of thanks after such an excellent speech by Dr. Goenka. Dr. Goenka, MD, CEO, and Mahindra, hearing you and specific points what you raised that, certain thing I'm going to carry in my mind that Atmanirbhar is a pride in what we do and offer. I think that's something I was going to cherish and remembering that. And the change in mindset, what you talked about. And most important thing is we are habituated to incrementalism, and you said no incrementalism. See, listening to you has been such a great thing that, it's like listening a little bit of trying to read Gita, because I think every time I start remembering what you told me, I think I'm trying to get new meanings. So one very important thing, and since I talked about Gita, I think I need to really bring Prabhupada, who actually said, association is the most important thing, because in association of the right personality with the supreme good is where you are going to reach. I think the entire Atmanirbhar, the entire discussion what we had today, actually it got me that. And thanks a lot, Doctor, for saying this. And I think it has been an emotive and emotional speech. And I think we will carry it a long, long way. If you talk about a brand, I have to tell you one small incident. I was passing through Antwerp airport, and I happened to see idlis in the lounge. And so I asked somebody, you have an Indian there. Then I said, I want to see the chef. So interestingly, I had a Belgian coming and said, I made the idli. So I said, look, if we can actually create brands for this accepted, certain brands in India is everywhere. So why are you not able to do other things? I think that's a question which probably you have actually answered, saying that you have to take it. You have to ensure that people do accept it, understand the value. Otherwise, I think you'll never spread a brand. Thank you again for that. I need to thank all the representatives from the bi-national chambers, CCCC, and representation from the offices the trade office people have been here, and there is also government officials who are probably listening to this. All the past presidents of MCCI who are in the virtual role now, and all the GC members, chairman and the co-chairman and the expert committee members, expert committees, and members of the chambers. I understand there is close to 300 invitees already in the system, 200 in the virtual and 100 in YouTube. And when I specifically talk about the chamber people, specifically talk about the members and the people in the secretariat, I have to say, I have to quote one Quran, I think it's very popular in South, Doctor. அருமை உடைத்தென்று அசாவாமை வேண்டும் பெருமை முயற்சித்தல். It is from Tirukural. It actually tells only one thing. Don't just say that it is difficult to do. The feeling of being difficult to do is something you should forget, and you have to work in the most difficult time. I think MCCI, the entire team I mentioned today, right from the secretariat, the council members, others, I know the kind of work they have done. I think it has been talked to by the past president also. So our thanks are to all of them for doing the wonderful job and keeping the association up and also being present here today. The last but not the least, the press was always supported MCCI because we used to talk for the industry and related things in Tamil Nadu, and they always helped us, always stood by us. So thank you for all the press crops, and let me again thank all of you for being part of this. And once again, let me thank Dr. Goenka for being here and giving us a wonderful day. Thank you, sir.
It is a pleasure. Thank you, Krishnan.
Thank you, Dr. Goenka. Thank you, everyone. Good evening. I think this is the. Do we have a national anthem, Saraswati, or this is the?
I don't know whether people will stand virtually.
Yeah.
We didn't attempt. In fact, we would have cut a cake usually on our birthday. We couldn't do that also. So, Jai Hind.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.